And look who's here, it's Smokey the Bear. In 1966, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City featured a 58-foot Smokey Bear balloon detonation of a nuclear device by the Manhattan Project. So here we are at the Smokey Bear Historical Park in Capitan, New Mexico. 75 years strong. Lookout trees. Beginning in the 1920s, lookout trees were a simple fire lookout created by attaching a ladder or a series of spikes to a tall tree that had been cut off to approximately the last 10 feet. A platform was placed on the top, allowing rangers to climb the tree and view the surroundings. Later, railings were placed on the platform. Often there would be a table on the ground where calculations were performed. From a distinctive native stone by the CCC in 1940, Mongeau Lookout in the Lincoln National Forest was in operation until 2012, when the Little Bear Fire destroyed the wooden and metal portions of the tower and has since been rebuilt in 2014. Osborne Firefinder is a type of alidade used by fire lookouts to find the azimuth of smoke to determine the location of wildland fires. Oh yeah, you see those in the movies. Fire lookouts were makeshift camps set up as a patrol point where a designated observer would ride a horse and make fire observations. Sometimes it was no more than the top of a tree. Often it was just a post with an alidade and a protractor. If a fire was spotted, it was their job to ride it to it and extinguish it. The next stage in fire lookout architecture was primitive wooden platforms, sometimes with a modest cover but open on all sides to the elements. Each fire lookout reflected the availability of local building materials. Sources say that at one time there were between 7,000 to 8,000 lookouts nationwide. Today there are approximately only 550. This one was located in Ruidoso, New Mexico. It was completed in 1940 by the U.S. Forest Service to serve with the Lincoln National Forest. It remains in active use for detection of urban and wildland fires. The structure is 30 feet aeromotor tower with metal catwalks and is topped with a 14 by 14 foot wooden cab. The first detonation of a nuclear device by the Manhattan Project at Trinity site was observed by Herbert Lee Traylor, the forest ranger on duty at the time of the explosion. That's in that movie. Yeah, this was the tower that the Forest Service ranger watched it from. That's a cool model of a fire tower. And look who's here, it's Smokey the Bear. Smokey! Happy 40th birthday from 1984. Oh, cute. And look at all the little Smokies. If you can see, it's quite a glare. Who was the vet that treated Smokey? Dr. Edwin Smith of Santa Fe, New Mexico. When did Smokey Bear begin? August 9th, 1944. Who found Smokey? The fire crew from Fort Bliss. Who is the only international symbol more famous than Smokey? Santa Claus. It was Smokey buried at 3 o'clock in the morning because they were scared his body would be stolen. Oh, that's awful. Where was Smokey Bear found? Capitan Mountains in New Mexico. What is Smokey's zip code? 20252. Remember, Only you can prevent forest fires. Where did Smokey Bear live? The National Zoo in Washington, D.C. Name 3 sides of the fire triangle: heat, oxygen, and fuel. Who was the ranger that cared for Smokey? Ray Bell. What's this? What was Smokey's original name? Hotfoot Teddy. Oh, and who was Smokey's personal artist? Rudolph Wendelin. Oh, here's Smokey's funeral. Having spent a lifetime as a living symbol of fire prevention, Smokey the Bear died at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. on November 9th, 1976. His remains were flown to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then transported to Capitan by convoy. Dedication on November 17th, 1976 was held in the newly formed Smokey Bear Historical State Park, as it was then called. Speaking at the ceremony was Elliot Barker, the New Mexico game warden, who had initially approved the idea of Smokey as the living symbol and then worked with K-Flock to make a home for Smokey at the National Zoo. About 200 people attended the ceremony, honoring the tremendous goodwill that Smokey had generated while serving as the program's living symbol. Oh, look at him standing up there. Oh my God. Oh. I know he was when he was just a baby, a little cub. Take pictures in the yard. Preventing unwanted human-caused fires, a national priority. Cooperative forest fire prevention program was formed during World War II, but the idea that unwanted human-caused forest fires are preventable was established much earlier, before the turn of the century. In 1905, the success of the newly established Forest Service was measured by how well it protected forests from fire. World War II brought the issue into sharper focus as the world conflict drew closer to the United States. An extra burden was placed on the nation's forest resources to meet military needs. As early as 1939, the poster, "Your Forest, Your Fault," right there, featuring Uncle Sam as a forest ranger, was reviewed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt and staff in an effort to spread fire prevention message to the nation. That was supposed to be Uncle Sam's message to the nation. Forest fires aid the enemy. Use the ashtray. A few months after Pearl Harbor, forest protection became particularly important when an enemy shelling occurred near Los Padres National Forest off the coast of Southern California. Forest resources were critical. The War Department considered lumber nearly as crucial as ammunition. In response to the danger, the U.S. Forest Service organized the CFFP program in 1942 to increase public awareness. At the time, the Wartime Advertising Council, forerunner to the modern day Advertising Council, was already engaged in a volunteer public service advertising campaign to promote the war effort. As a public service, the council agreed to sponsor a nationwide fire prevention crusade aimed at the average citizen. Pre-Smokey posters. As posters were developed, several graphic ideas were pursued. However, soon the campaign adopted the idea of using an animal as a symbol. One animal that came to mind was Bambi, the deer who survived a forest fire in the Walt Disney 1942 movie Bambi. Disney loaned the appealing character for use in a 1944 poster. Bambi was a great success as a forest fire prevention image. However, Bambi was only on loan. Disney had not released it, so a different animal was needed to serve as a permanent symbol. The search began. Several animals were suggested, including a squirrel. Then a large animal was suggested, an animal that was not only familiar, but looked as if it could put out a fire by itself. Bambi could not do that, nor could a beaver, a squirrel, a chipmunk, or an owl. But a bear could. Are the first Smokey Bear posters. August 9, 1944, the Smokey Bear Fire Prevention Campaign was born. Albert Stahl, an artist famous for his animal paintings, was commissioned to paint the first Smokey Bear poster. A team of Forest Service staff offered ideas about how to increase the bear's appeal. Fred Schroeder recommended that the bear wear a ranger hat. Bill Berghoffen is credited with suggesting the blue dungarees. Richard Hammett is said to have named the bear Smokey after the colorful and admired assistant chief of the New York City Fire Department, Smokey Joe Martin. In early 1946, Rudy Wendelin, artist with the Forest Service, assumed the role as the official caretaker of the Smokey Bear image and became Smokey's primary artist. Wendelin oversaw the annual campaign posters and produced more than 4,000 Smokey works of arts. Smokey enters radio. That's why they call it Smokey, that called Smokey. Funny. Radio voice for Smokey Bear. Eddie Arnold and Friends. Hop Along Cassidy with Friends. And Roy Rogers. There's a song. Smokey Bear song. Smokey's radio, forest fire prevention. 4.5-minute programs. Celebrities have given generously of their time in the cause of fire prevention over the years. Smokey's message has been broadcast by a host of celebrities, including Roy Rogers, Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, Eddie Arnold, William Boyd, Vaughn Monroe, Ray Charles, David Copperfield, Jim Nabors, Dick Van Dyke, Zaza Gabor, Jack Benny, George Burns, James Stewart, Carol Burnett, Al Unser, Ernest and Tova Borgnine, and Sammy Davis Jr. In 1947, Smokey entered radio through the voice of Jackson Weaver, a noted Washington radio personality. Weaver distinguished the familiar voice of Smokey by putting his head in a trash can. Many singing groups have also supported Smokey: Sons of the Pioneers, the Limelighters, and the Oak Ridge Boys. Smokey gets a Junior Forest Ranger program in his own zip code. Junior Forest Ranger program dates back to 1953. At the time, Ideal Toys received permission to include with its stuffed Smokey Bear toy an application for a child to become a Junior Forest Ranger. Below, Timmy, actor John Provost of the 1950 show Lassie, shows his Junior Forest Ranger badge in company with Lassie and the Smokey Bear stuffed toy. The Golden Smokey is one of the most prestigious awards created by the CFFP program to honor fire prevention efforts. The first Golden Smokey was presented on May 8, 1958 by President Dwight Eisenhower to Judy Bell, Ray Bell's daughter, on behalf of America's children. By 1955, more than 500,000 youngsters were helping Smokey prevent forest fires. By 1964, Smokey was so popular that he was given his own secretary and postal zip code to manage his mail. Smokey received more mail than anyone else in Washington, D.C., including the President of the United States. In 1962, an American black bear with gold-colored fur who had been orphaned near Magdalena, New Mexico, was sent to the National Zoo as a mate for Smokey. Ray Bell, the game warden, who had cared for Smokey as a young cub, flew Goldie to her new home. A reception was held to celebrate her arrival on September 8, 1962. Goldie's name commemorated the golden anniversary of New Mexico's statehood. Also known as Mrs. Smokey, she was a very gentle bear. Goldie lived at the zoo until her death in 1977, but no cubs were ever born to Smokey and Goldie. In 1966, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City featured a 58-foot Smokey Bear balloon. Inflating the 320-pound balloon required 8,000 cubic feet of helium and the strength of 39 volunteer firemen. First flight, October 3, 1993. The balloon was 120,000 cubic feet. His hat was 70 feet in diameter, 9 stories tall, 5 miles of thread, 4,670 square yards of material, and 30 million BTU per hour. There was an accident. Point of a 670-foot radio tower became the final resting place, oh my goodness, of Smokey Bear balloon at the October 2004 Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta. Bill Chappell and his passengers sustained no injuries in the collision with the radio tower after the balloon was unable to gain altitude. A 1968 survey found that 98% of all school-age children in America and 94% of all adults recognized who Smokey was, and the nature of his message. This is one of the best records of communication effectiveness ever achieved by an advertising symbol. And did we listen? Yes. In 1957, the number of forest fires in the U.S. dropped below 100,000 for the first time in history. By 1969, the amount of forest and range land burned in the U.S. had dropped 2.5 million acres annually, less than 10% of the average amount burned annually in 1941. In 1992, the Forest Service estimated that accidental human-caused wildfires had been reduced by approximately one-half since the campaign began, despite the fact that more than 10 times as many people visited our public lands in the 1940s. In fact, the program has been so successful that foresters sometimes have difficulty helping the public understand that prescribed or natural fires can be helpful in improving forest environments. How did you first learn about Smokey Bear? Chances are you heard about Smokey through one of the many grassroots organizations that have teamed with the CFFP. Ma'am, how did you first learn about Smokey Bear? In the late 1950s, Smokey's fame had gone far beyond the borders of the United States. Australia has Smokey the koala. Mexico, a bear symbol named Simon el Oso. Simon the Bear is used in the Mexican forest fire prevention effort. Canada, the Canadian Forestry Association adopted Smokey Beaver as their forest fire prevention symbol. And there it is, world-renowned. Smokey's influence felt worldwide. After the death of the living symbol in 1976, the CFFP program launched a Back to Basics campaign to remind the public that the real Smokey Bear had always been the one on the poster. Shortened slogans reinforced Smokey's fire prevention guidance, and at the same time, the simple but important message Smokey Bear was alive and well. 50 years and still going. Smokey celebrated 40 years in a successful fire prevention campaign in August 1984 with a party in Capitan, New Mexico. In honor of Smokey's 40th birthday, the Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp. Smokey's 50th birthday was a year-long party. A travel exhibit, Happy Birthday Smokey, was viewed by over 200,000 people. Smokey made appearances at the International Balloon Festival, Macy's Parade, the Tournament of Roses, the Indianapolis 500, Soccer's World Cup, and Disney World. Capitan also celebrated Smokey's birthday in style. It's supposed to be what he looked like as a cub. Smokey Bear and Ray Bell. That was Smokey in the National Zoo at age 8, 250 pounds. There he is as a cub. There's the firefighting pictures. There's the Capitan Gap fire. Harness was worn by Smokey Bear as a cub on his 1950 flight to Washington, D.C. Frank Hines of Hobbs, New Mexico, piloted the plane, while Homer C. Pickens, the assistant game warden for the Mexico Game and Fish Department, cared for Smokey during the flight. Oh. When you visit the forest, do you think of Smokey? Truckload of CCC volunteers heads off to fight a wildfire in 1934. Fire ecology. Fire behavior. Sweet. Forest Service. I forgot that. Worst wildfires in U.S. history. Firefighting. There's the triangle. Heat, oxygen, and fuel equals fire. Firefighting tools. There's your drip torch, backpack pump, McCloud, fire shovel, and Pulaski. That's a cute one. Aww.
Careless fires is essential, just like Smokey told us. To some of us, it seems that Smokey has always been around to remind us to be careful.
Smokey's garden. Map of the park. Smokey's grave. It'd be to our right, I guess, over here, somewhere. Is that right? Looking at it the right way? There's the ponds over there, I think. So I guess the grave is over here. Billy the Kid National Scenic Byway. White fir tree. There's the history of the park. Nice little park. If it wasn't a rainy, cold day, it would be a nice place to visit. There's a little amphitheater. Little pond. Creek. Stream. Pretty tree. There you can get a picture next to Smokey if you walk over there. Resting place of the first Smokey Bear balloon. I guess that's the resting place for it. Fallen Firefighter Memorial, New Mexico Wildland Fallen Firefighter Memorial. It's got names of all of them. Here it is. Remember Smokey, there's his grave. Aww. This is the resting place of the first living Smokey Bear. In 1956, when Smokey was a tiny cub, wildfire burned the forest home in the nearby Capitan Mountains of the Lincoln National Forest. Firefighters found the badly burned cub clinging to a blackened tree and saved his life. In June 1950, the cub was flown out to our nation's capital to become the living symbol of wildfire prevention and wildlife conservation. After 25 years, he was replaced by another orphan black bear from the Lincoln National Forest. He was 25 years old. That's 70 years old in human years, which was, in those days, mandatory retirement age for all federal employees. Smokey was honored as the first bear to become a full-fledged member of the National Association of Retired Federal Employees. At age 26, Smokey died peacefully in his sleep of old age in our nation's capital. The date was November 9th, 1976, our nation's bicentennial year. Among many suggestions, burying Smokey in the Capitan Mountains near where he was found was considered a fitting final chapter, but concerns of vandalism and the virtually inaccessible site made another proposal prevail to bury him in the town of Capitan. It has been said that although Smokey belongs to everyone, the people of Capitan love him just a little bit more. Quietly, still suspect of vandals, his remains were flown to Albuquerque, driven to Capitan, and a respectful burial took place shortly after. Shortly after a dedication ceremony was held and attended by over 200 guests. The boulder that marks his grave was brought down from the forest where he was found. Smokey Bear lives in the hearts of children. He is a symbol of pride to the people of New Mexico. His name is synonymous with forest fire prevention nationwide, and he is the world's most well-known and beloved bear. For years and years to come, people can visit Smokey's gravesite and pay their respects to this American legend. And remember, only you can prevent forest fires. Very nice. What is that? That's bubbles. Huh.